Hello and welcome to the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast. Every soldier counts for us because it's in our name. My name is Debraj Mukherjee, Captain Debraj Mukherjee, otherwise known as Raj, and today we're talking about safety. As we enter into the winter season, we're actually entering into what I recently learned is the most dangerous season for soldiers. I have with me our safety officer, Mr. Christopher Starnes. How you doing today?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah.
And so, tell me, what does a safety officer do? If you don't mind telling me a little bit about that.
So the safety officer is primarily responsible for advising the command team on risk management and occupational health and safety requirements, that are set forth through the Department of the Army, Department of Defense, and also OSHA or host nation laws. So we are the subject matter experts for that.
You're the subject matter experts on a lot of stuff, it sounds like.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, it could be daunting at times, and then sometimes when you start digging through the weeds, you find out that some rules they counteract each other. So you kind of got to figure out where you're at in time and space, and kind of where which ones are applying to you right now. But maybe, the next job site, the next day might be something completely different, and that you're following a different set of rules. So
whenever I think of the safety section, I always think of SWMs. Whenever I'm getting ready to go to the motor pool in the morning, it's like, hey, are there any SWMs? And I think once there was a really long one on tires, and the safety guys always walk around and make sure we got our oil stored correctly and all that stuff. So I mean, it's an important job, and it's a large, it seems like such a wide breadth that you guys have to cover. And then like you said, now you're having to be the subject matter expert on all these things, and you have to use your judgment on what applies and when. So that sounds like a huge responsibility that I'm glad I don't have.
You definitely got to apply a lot of judgment to it, especially when it comes to the risk management process. Risk management can be subjective.
Oh, yeah.
Based off the individual, based off of their experiences, stuff like that. I was having a conversation with a colonel recently, and he was talking to me about how he envisions risk management. And, he spoke to me, and what he had to say was wonderful. It was great.
Right.
But again, I told him, I was like, sir, but you're also speaking with years of experience. Think about that young second lieutenant or that young E5 out there that's putting this risk assessment together, and it could be completely different and just not making the mark.
I 100% agree. I think for me, coming up as a lieutenant, the first risk assessment I put together versus the most recent risk assessment I've ever done, especially when I was a commander, are two very risk assessments based on your understanding of how a training or something is going to go. And I think especially when you're putting it together for the first time, you always there's no plagiarism in the Army. So you're always like, hey man, I'm doing an M4 range, what do you got for me? And you're kind of looking at it, you're like, okay, yeah, that's a log. That looks like you're just kind of looking for the visual length and so, but then once you do a couple training events, you're like, okay, I actually need to make sure we have the earplugs, make sure the guys have food, make sure we have a warmth, make sure and so I think you're right. I think the experience is such a huge part of risk assessment, and it is commanders manage risk. Commanders sign off on those things, and the people who prepare them, having them be experienced in what they're preparing as far as events goes is super important.
Yeah, and some of the things that I see, to kind of tap into what you said, there's no plagiarism in the Army. The old cut and paste, it gets people. And I see some really funny stuff on there, at times. So I had one deliberate risk assessment worksheet. He's like, hey, Chris, you mind taking a look at this real quick and just let us know what you think? And it was something for for the command, 19th ESC command, and they were gonna hand out awards, and I want to say it was for school, and it was gonna be that type of event. It's just they did a draw for it, and I was like, oh, this is great. But then as I'm reading through it, it started talking about one of the hazards was underage drinking, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, what type of awards are we handing out here? I mean, where was this when I was a soldier? But
one shot per award,
right?
One shot for an AM, two shots for an ARCOM.
So it's hey, I responded back to this individual, and I was like, hey, this is really good. It's but can we just take a quick extra look at this. I really don't think this is what the intent of this mission is. If it is, by all means, I'm gonna support you. You know what I mean? But really,
we'll do it safely. We'll do it safely.
That's right. But we'll do it. It's just double check. Before.
Absolutely.
And they were like, "Oh, good catch. I really appreciate it. Yeah, no problem. And we left it between us. It didn't go anywhere. I guess it is now. Now it's on the podcast.
Right.
But
no, non-attributional. This podcast non-attributional.
Right.
It's funny that you mentioned that because you see a lot of the copy, and I think when we say commanders, leaders, we manage risk, and definitely that's something that's in the commander's wheelhouse. But when it comes to the draw, I know when you're doing op order planning and operations planning, you're thinking about all the things that are going to happen on the objective. You're thinking about all the things that you need to do 30 days, 60 days, all that out. And oftentimes a draw is like the afterthought. Mm-hmm. And, I've gotten draws for like convoys from lieutenants who it's like, oh, we're worried about fratricide on this convoy. What's happening? Like, you got live rounds? Like, what do you do? And so we'll sit down, we'll have these sessions, we'll nug out on every part and piece of this training that needs to happen, and then it's like, oh, by the way, let's get that draw out. Check the drive and see if we have something. And so, definitely putting that time and effort into the draw is important to, making sure that a training goes off without a hitch, and it can often be a point of reflection as well. I think,
right?
When we think about like safety.
Yeah, and everything comes with risk, right? And just the profession of the United States Army, there's inherent risk in your daily activities. Just being a human being, there's risks in your day. Waking up every morning and shaving. There's risks in that.
Half asleep with a razor. That's
right. And so I like to tell people that I'm not your normal safety. I don't run around and I tell everybody wrap them in bubble wrap and then put them to work. No,
put a belt on.
Yeah,
put a reflective belt on the bubble wrap.
Exactly, right. Your PT belt saves the world, right? But we have to accept risk in our daily lives in the mission that we do. So it's just I tell people that if you don't get in the habit of just signing off on risk just because you can, right? I like to tell people if you're gonna assume this risk, whatever it may be, you have to be able to defend it. And if you can defend it, then it's risk that you're probably okay to assume if it's appropriate for your level as the command.
Because it's calculated risk.
Right.
Going back to the commander's leader's wheelhouse in the Army, what we do is we take calculated risks. When we conduct training, when we conduct missions, we can't. Our job is to sort of we're on the wall, we're out front, we're inherently doing operations in which death and injury are a possibility. And it's impossible to say that the possibility of death and injury is zero, so we have to be very deliberate in making sure that preventable death and injury is minimized.
Yeah.
Because everything because like you said, our lives are inherently dangerous for what we do. So
minimized or less of the severity of the outcome.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Mitigating the outcomes.
Right. So I've got several combat tours, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and then during those time periods, IEDs was big, right? But can you defeat every single IED out there? No, you can't. So what other measures are we going to put in place to lessen the severity of the outcome? And that's how the Army came out with, up armored, the EWO, electronic warfare, of jamming signals, stuff like that, So
and it came from the risk assessments. It came from analyzing the threat and being very deliberate about it and looking at routes and that it feeds programs.
Yep.
It feeds newer, better pieces of equipment. And it is funny to me that and I mean I'm just as guilty as anyone else is. We sometimes will. Downplay risks and we'll be like, it's fine. We've done this range a million times before. Like, what's going to go wrong? But it really is part of, sitting, taking a second, stepping back and being deliberate in how we assess that risk. Because when you put it on the sheet, you're putting it on. You're not just putting it on a piece of paper. You're thinking like, man, this could actually happen, and what are the steps that I'm going to take? And yeah, I mean, having that draw in your hand, just like your con op or your op order that you can just brief anyone, is just as important.
Absolutely, you know, and I tell people it only takes one time and it only takes 1 second, you know, so. You know, for individuals, like you said, you know, I've done this 100 times, nothing ever happened. Well, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen this time, you know, so you got to continue the same frame of mind, you know, throughout the whole process. And, you know, some of the statistically, you know, it's the younger soldiers,
right?
You know, that don't know any better. You know, I always like to tell people, you know, the older I get, the smarter my parents are. You know, I could have saved myself a lot of heartache. You know,
I was thinking about that,
if I would have just listened to them as a teenager, you know, and stuff like that. So
sometimes I think about my teachers too. I'm like, wow, they were really good teachers. I was just a really bad student.
Yeah, if I would listen to, you know, some of my NCOs when I was a younger soldier, you know, like, yeah, don't do that, and then they're like, nah, it's not. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
You don't understand. I'm special.
Right.
Yeah,
it'll never happen to me. Yeah. Yeah, you know, so it's just listening to them, you know, and then the other group, I guess you could say, would be people who have been doing it for years, you know, because they've gone through it 100 times and nothing has happened,
right?
You know, so they're really fitting into that category. It's fine, you know, I've done this for 20 years. You know, whatever it may be, and then boom, there it happens.
I think that is like the double edge of experience, where especially when you see a lot of you know, coming from EOD, you have these NCOs who they can do most training and operations like the back of their hand.
Yeah, and
you know, they know it, they know the equipment, they know the scenarios, and sometimes especially when you're young, it's like, well, hey, don't we have to worry about this? And they're like, nah, it's fine.
Yeah,
and you do. It is hard to. I don't want to call it complacency, but it does. It sort of creeps in. It creeps into what you do when you've done it a million times and you feel like you know the variables. Only one thing needs to be off. You know, one time, and like you were saying, all the calculus changes.
Yep.
And so yeah, it is. It's like having experience makes you great because it makes you better at assessing risk. But at the same time, it can make you like a little bit more like, nah, don't worry about that. We're fine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so you know, risk can be complicated.
Yeah,
you know, understanding it, being able to manage it, it can. And you know, like just kind of sum it up. You know, it's based off of experience. You know, your formal education, your life education, you know, all that, and then, you know, there's things that you just don't learn until you're of a certain age. You know, kind of going back to what I was saying about my parents, you know, it's like, you know, life problems. If people told me about it when I was in my 20s, but then when, you know, just throwing a number out there, 30, like the light bulb moment didn't happen until I was 30, you know,
I agree.
at that time, you know.
When you
like
yourself start becoming more cautious
yeah.
and you start realizing, hey, maybe I'm not invincible.
Right.
Is there a chance that I could be hurt or die?
Yeah.
You start like, you're doing some real questions about your mortality, and then you're like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to check my tires.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and then, you know, going on our topic here for Winter Safe, you know, there's a reason why I don't snowboard and skiing, you know, because that's how I die.
Yeah,
you know, that's how I end up like hurt for now. Just it's not for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I think this is a great conversation we've had about risk and talking about like winter safety. So something and one of the reasons we want to do this podcast is when we were doing the safety stand down day, you know, you had a booth, and something that surprised me is I did not know that this is the second most dangerous season. As far as risk is concerned for like soldiers, like this is the second most. Is the most dangerous or like the most?
The second most.
Oh, the second most.
Yeah,
okay,
second most statistically for the Army.
Okay.
So the Army Safety Center or Combat Readiness Center, you know, they track all this and they keep historical files and all this type stuff. And they, you know, I encourage everyone to go onto their website. It's easy. Some things are CAC enabled. You know, like if you want to get a TM for a striker, which I recently had to do. You know, things like that. But you know, it's a lot of it's open source, and there's a lot of good information on there. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Going back to the previous conversation we had as well, but yeah. So it is the second most deadliest time for the Army, and it historically it's like November 20th through through January 4th is very dangerous, and most of that is from automobiles. From driving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
And this is the season where everyone's like, we got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas, we got New Year's. Everyone's trying to like visit family and travel. So I can see how that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, traveling. So again, going back, it's the most dangerous thing we do, right? Is operate vehicles as the Army. So, like you said, traveling. Then you got all these the holidays. Holidays usually incorporate, for some people, alcohol. Drinking.
Sometimes award ceremonies incorporate alcohol.
Yeah, right. So then you got on top of that. Then now you got icy roads or wet roads or poor car maintenance, stuff like that. Like all these things start to compile, and at some point they all align, right? And then that's when you have your catastrophe.
And so I know back in the States, visiting family for Thanksgiving and Christmas, unfortunately, one of the few drawbacks about being stationed over here is we don't necessarily have our family with us. So what sort of traffic safety issues do we see in Korea in particular?
Yeah, so Korea's got a lot. Just the overall driving culture of South Korea, it is different.
It takes some adapting to.
Yeah, it really does. Even like been here almost going on a year now. This is my third tour in Korea. It's the first time I ever had my own privately owned vehicle here and stuff like that. So it's daunting. And, I find myself taking the bus a lot of times and thinking that this is safer. But then after a couple of times of jumping on the bus and how they drive, it's like, man, where's my seatbelt? There's no seatbelt. Like what is going on?
It's a matter of choosing, how many people do you want to be in the accident with? A bus full of people or a car full of people?
Right. But and then, a lot of other things too, or one other major factor is the type of vehicles that service members or civilians drive, right? So all we care about is, does it go? Does the heater work in the winter? And does the AC work in the summer? That's it.
And we're negotiable. Yeah. I think I was negotiable on whether or not the AC worked in the summer.
Right. So. Yeah, you can, But, we don't know the maintenance of it, right? So talking about my car specifically, it's 12 years old, right? I think it runs good. I went and had it checked out by a mechanic. I encourage soldiers and others to go out and, have it additional set of eyes by a professional mechanic. Go check it out. Just make sure everything is safe. But you don't know. Did the last person, did they keep up with the maintenance? When's the last time that oil was changed, or your antifreeze, your windshield wipers, things like that. I remember when I was buying this car, the dealer, he was trying to sell to me, and I was like, I want new tires. Like you got to put me new tires. And they were bald, and they had this big bulge coming out the side.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, absolutely not. And it was up in Wagon, and he's like, oh no, it's fine. You could drive it to Daegu. And I'm like, I'm not disputing that I can drive it. What I'm disputing is that it's safe for me to load up not only me but my family in this thing and then get on the highway. Like, no, like I told him, I was like, look, sir, this is it. Like, you're gonna put new tires on, or I'm walking out of this place right now. It's take it or leave it, my friend. We already set on the price. We negotiated the price, and it is what it is. But you're gonna add tires.
Yeah.
And so he did. He put new tires on it and stuff like that.
It's funny that you mentioned that with we call them the Korea Hoopties is the mindset you have, like, my vehicle back in the States, like, that's my baby. Like, I got to get the oil changed. I got to get the tires run. If I can, get any add-ons and put on there. But then something that I know I fall into, and a lot of, like, my friends will be like, I bought the car here. It's like, hey, are you going to pay to change the oil filter or do whatever? Like, man, I'm not putting money into this car. Like, this is just here to get me around. But it's like, I'm not investing in this thing or whatever. But it's like, if you get the oil change, you get the, the filter change, what you're doing is you're investing in your safety.
Yeah.
And it's easy to forget that it's like, well, this car is just a piece of junk I'm using to get around, but it's like, you're taking your life in your hands every time you get in that thing.
Yeah.
I think some of these are like legacy vehicles that have probably been around since like the 90s or something. Like there's colonels are walking around here who drove these cars when they were like lieutenants.
Yeah. I see cars with missing gas caps.
Oh, yeah.
Or the covers for it stuff. It's like, man, I don't know. It can't be that expensive, you know. I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but at least go get it checked out.
Yeah,
and
look on the internet.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
on the internet.
And who cares what color it is? You know,
Yeah.
it's in Korea. You'd be like, why has that person got a bright orange fuel cap? Oh well, who cares? You know. But at least you got something, you know, to keep those fumes locked in. You know, you're investing a little bit of change into your safety and stuff like that. Not only yours, but you know, others on the road. You know, unfortunately. And you know, I hope it never happens to me. But if you get into a vehicle accident, you know, you're also, other people are going to be involved,
right?
You know, so yeah, again, that goes back to the risk management at the start of this conversation. You know, of trying to eliminate that hazard, or you know, at least being able to mitigate the severity of it.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny that you know, talking about so we actually, over the past last week, we went down to Busan. You know, I think you went down there as well to cover the training. So driving from Daegu to Busan, and then you know, once you kind of get into the Busan area and you're doing the bobbing and weaving in traffic, we had a TMP. It was a big old van, a big old 6-pack van, and I ended up driving. You know, license, everything, but you know, I got my license when I was 17. So and then I was 17 when I joined the Army. So I've done a lot of driving in my life. Like I wouldn't say like I'm an expert, but experienced. Yeah. But even me, I'm like driving in this van, trying to like bob and weave through traffic. And I think about it, I'm like, man, how is a 19-year-old kid doing this? Because this is giving me anxiety. Yeah. Like, you know, it's like, I know to check my mirrors. I know to look for my blind spot. And it's still like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And so when I think about somebody who might just be 2 or 3 years away from their license, and you know, maybe they're used to driving in their hometown, or something that I learned is the S3 here is a lot of young soldiers, you know, we get them these TMP licenses, and they don't have, a driver's license is a requirement to get a TMP or a tactical license here, but you know, soldiers don't have licenses a lot of times. So I know when I was on Hood, we would license them there, and so their first experience they had driving a vehicle was a Humvee, and you know, talk about blind spots.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I think it's all blind spots. So.
Yeah, that's a big leap. Yeah. You know what you're talking about. You're bringing this young, inexperienced soldier in, and you're like, here you go. Here's your learner's permit. Drive safe. Don't do anything stupid. Right. That's your safety. The normal safety brief. Right. Don't be stupid. Oh, what is stupid?
What is stupid?
Yeah. What does that mean? But a young soldier is like, all right, won't be stupid. You know, they're not going to say anything. You know, or ask the questions. But then, so you're like, here's your learner's permit, your driver's license, and now here, go drive this up armored, whatever.
Right.
You know,
go ahead and back into that parking spot.
Exactly. You know, but so it's a huge leap in your risk, right? It's massive. So is there another way, you know, that you can like mitigate that? You know, it's really what commanders and leaders at echelon really need to focus on, you know, and the commander's got a lot of responsibility, but in there, you know, she's got seasoned professionals there to assist them. You know, that commander has their NCO Corps. So I'm a retired first sergeant, so I'm real big on the NCO Corps, right? They have that first sergeant really there to help advise the commander on the training strategies for the organization. They got that young E5 that can say, hey, you know what, sir? You know, I got Private Starnes here, but he just got his license. Like, is it okay if maybe I drive? You know, at least there, and then we can get him he can drive around in the field. And then if we evaluate him well enough and we're confident in his abilities, maybe they can drive back, you know, on the roads here in Korea. You know, kind of taking that approach and thinking about it. You know, commander's busy, right? They got a lot of responsibility, and, you know, hats off to them. You know, so, you know, leaders at echelon should really not be afraid to talk to their commander when it comes to risk, you know. Yeah. Even the soldier, right? The soldier... you know, hey, Sergeant, you know, I'm tired. I can't keep my eyes open. You know, can we swap out? You know, sometimes soldiers don't. I call them, you want to be the hero, you know, like, no, it's not a sign of weakness, right? Just tell them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is one of those things where, like, we think of it especially when you're young, everyone assumes you have all the energy in the world, and you know you might have been put through your paces on the training, and now you got to drive back, and sometimes raising your hand. And I really like what you said about the leaders at echelon, because I mean, who knows the soldiers better than the NCOs? Right. And when NCOs step in and they're like, hey, I don't want him driving. Like, I've seen him walk, and it's only going to get worse between when you put him behind a wheel. And you know, I think commanders and officers in general take that to heart, and they let. That's where the NCOs really get to do their magic as leaders of people. So definitely in Korea, speaking of TMPs and driving down to Busan, I think that ends up being one of our primary modes for getting people around, aside from the buses and the POVs. Do you have any recommendations to the NCOs and leadership here when it comes to putting a junior soldier behind the TMPs?
TMPs do take up quite a bit of accidents. And again, it goes back down to the same thing of leaders being able to train their soldiers. If they're just received their license and you're going to put them out on the roads in South Korea, you probably should evaluate them before, just like the same you would as a tactical vehicle. Have them drive around the camp a little bit. Do they evaluate them? Like, are they applying the brakes properly? Are they turning left when they're supposed to be turning left? I don't know how many times when I was a young driver, my chief would tell me turn left, and then there I go, I go right, and he's like, your other left, oh, they, I mean,
do they have the L and the R posted on the steering wheel?
Yeah, I'm driving like this, with my hands up, but
hey, nothing wrong with using the L. I still use it.
Yeah, because you're nervous, right? And then so you're nervous, you're frightened, you don't want to mess up. Like, I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and be like, you know what, I'm gonna wreck a TMP today. I don't think that
life
anyone
has been going too well for me. Right. I need a gross accident.
Right. I need some drama. Yeah. So, but yeah, just really, take it one point at a time. Like, drive around camp a little bit, evaluate them before you turn them loose on the roads. Down here in Area 4. You feel comfortable in their abilities. The soldier feels comfortable in their abilities. Now, you know what? Let's go from Henry to Walker. That's a short distance, very mild.
Short but treacherous.
Yeah, absolutely, right. and so do that a couple times. Let them build their confidence. You're building your confidence in them as well. So they'd be like, all right, you know what? Next week we're gonna go to Camp Carroll. And we're gonna I'm gonna have you drive down there or drive back or something like that. And just again develop that confidence in your abilities and stuff like that. It's saying like, oh, here's your TMP license, and now go to Camp Casey. You
did the online course.
You did the online. You're good, and you know what? You're gonna go by yourself, and no.
You and this other specialist are gonna go. You're gonna have 4 specialists in the back. I'm sure you're gonna be quiet and well managed the whole ride.
Right. And so just really don't want to rush to failure, right? So I always had leaders talk about that, but don't rush to failure. Just take your time, make sure you're there safely. A W is a W. You know what I mean? Like, if you win by 1 point or you win by 100 points, that's still a W, right? Yeah. So if your mission is to go from Area 4 to Area 1 and drop off some nods, I don't know, I'm just making some stuff up, right? In a TMP, and you can do that safely, like that's a win, right? There's no time limit. There's no one gonna yell at you and scream at you and all this other type stuff. You got it there. Now I'm saying you probably shouldn't be stopping and hanging out in the Dragon and eat lunch and dinner and Yongsan. That's not what I'm saying.
Somehow you ended up in Seoul.
Right. You did this grand
You're
tour.
using the knots to do some hiking.
Right. Yeah. Within the parameters of your mission. But.
It is. Yeah. I agree. I think when is something like driving, and where if for senior leaders, we've all been driving around. We all generally go to remote areas, and there's a lot of driving involved in your life, and so it becomes you discount it. You discount the risk, and it's so easy to forget. And like I said, for me, I was because I think we talked last week before I drove down, so I kind of had safety on my mind. I was like, man, this is giving me nerves. I can't imagine having just gotten my license and all right, drive to Busan. Not getting into an accident.
Right, and that's only one small portion. Now throw in all the other things that are accomplished with it too. Your GPS, right? Now you're over there playing around with GPS and you AFN, I don't like that song. I'm going to put it over here. Yeah. You start pressing buttons, all this other type stuff. And
even little things like when you, and I think we were talking about it on the way back up, even things like having passengers and just having normal conversations with the passengers while you drive. We don't think about it, but when you're because I remember from driving school all the way back when I was like 16, is, they said like when you first start driving, you shouldn't really have anyone in the car with you aside from maybe like a parent, because they can be distractions. And so, that applies to this as well. It's like when you have like, a van full of soldiers and NCOs and people, and we generally tend to be conversational. As you're trying to focus on driving, and everyone's just kind of talking, and just having like normal conversations, and that can be distracting to your driving as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think something, and I think this is unique to Korea because I've never seen it on any other base, is because it's so restricted on who can drive it. I believe it's E7 and up, and then if you have a family, I think one of the ways we mitigate that, aside from having buses, are the PTDs. And that's the personal travel devices. Is that what you say?
Personal transportation devices.
Personal transport, and they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. You got the scooters, you got the bikes, you got the weird one wheelie thingies. Like it's fantastic and amazing, and a little nerve wracking to watch these soldiers travel the base and then go in between bases on these things. And do you have any like recommendations for the operation of those things?
Yeah, so the USFK, 8th Army, 19th ESC, we all have a very robust program that has a lot of requirements in order to operate one of those. So you have the formal education, it's online, but it's formal. A lot of soldiers here, they just like hop on it and go. I was like, I did the online training, I'm good, and just hop on it and go. Well, some of those things, they move.
Get fast.
Right? Yeah,
and you can
fly.
I think they figure out how to like take the limiters off, and now you got this thing going 60 miles an hour.
Thing is flying, right? And all you got is your little like helmet and a PT belt, right? And you're good. You're in your safety bubble, and
a PT belt it counts for a lot.
Right. But so at the end of the day, some of them are like on two wheels, right? So that's less traction, right? So it's all about how you operate it. Knowing when to shift your weight, how to apply your weight, how to apply your brakes. There's other training that you should be having as well, and maybe just ride around your little barracks area or something like that. Kind of get used to the vehicle, and then again, it goes back to what we were saying. A lot of these have been handed down. When's the last maintenance done on it? And a lot of them are batteries charged. So now you're incorporating a whole nother hazard of the battery. Electrical. Is it gonna start foaming up on you? Does it have a leak? All that type stuff. Is it gonna explode? If you plug it in, all that type stuff. So there's a lot of hazards with it, and you really got to be careful, right? So motorists should be looking out for PTDs. And then PTDs also have their own individual responsibility to look out for motorists as well. Just don't assume they see you, because you got the PT belt or whatever.
And that's I think is a motorcycle safety course is one of the ones that you have to take. And I remember a long time ago I used to have my license, and that's the one thing they say is like, don't assume the driver sees you. And like do everything you can to own your space, because and I used to. This was when I was stationed in Arizona, and everyone. They definitely don't see you, and they're always going really fast. And you think about the PTDs, like even on the roads, talking about between Camp Walker and Camp Henry, it's maybe like a mile, but it's a well traversed mile. Like it is. There are some obstacles, and there's a crosswalk. Everyone's trying to get through, and so now you got your little scooter, which has even less of a profile than like a small motorcycle, and that stuff is like super important to keep in mind.
And again, remember it's on two wheels. Unlike four, like an automobile, right? So, if you hit a little patch of ice or some like frozen leaves on the sidewalk, it's gonna act differently than your automobile.
Right?
Absolutely. And then your two wheels, you're talking maybe quarter of an inch, half inch of traction that you actually have making contact with the surface, compared to an automobile tire. So there's a lot more hazards associated with it, and then there's nothing there to protect you, just you and the space around you.
The open road.
Right. So as a motorcycle rider myself, I don't have a motorcycle anymore. I got rid of it before we came to Korea, but I enjoy the open road, and all that type stuff. But you have to be very careful.
It's not the same as driving the car, having an audiobook on, and just kind of going. It's like a constant wariness of like, man, this guy's too close to me, or whoa, they slowed down really fast, and because whoever causes the accident, whoever's at fault, the person on the motorcycle or the PTD is the one who's going to get the most injured.
Right.
And so, it is.
And you have no idea what the motorist is going through their minds. You know, maybe they're having a bad day and they're thinking about everything that happened during the day. You know, maybe they're on their way home and they're just thinking about what it is going home. Like, they're not even really focused on the driving aspect. They just know, like, muscle memory, like how to drive and get home, right? But their mind is somewhere else.
Yeah, and you know, and maybe you can confirm this. I think I read this a while ago that like the most dangerous part of any drive is like the last bit. Is like when you're closest to home is because that's when you're like, all right, I'm done, I did it, and so your guard is down. You're already thinking about like dinner or whatever it is, and it's like in that last, I don't know whatever the distance, a mile, quarter mile, that a lot of accidents occur because that's when people just don't. They've just stopped thinking about being safe on the road, and they're just trying to think about the next thing.
No, yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, there's a lot of studies on that. Like the National Transportation Safety Bureau, they came up with the same conclusion, you know, and it's just because people kind of mentally check out from driving. You get in the car and drive out of the parking lot and they're heading home, and then they check in, like for safely operating their vehicle, and then when they get real close, they check out, and now they're just thinking about what's for dinner, or what time's my show again, or dang, I still got 3 hours of emails I got to shift through, stuff like that, whatever it may be for that individual. So,
absolutely. Yeah. It's like that last turn or whatever before you hit the road, and then I've definitely resembled that.
Oh yeah,
I saw before we were just like taking that turn. It's like, all right, man, I think I got some in the fridge. I'm gonna heat something up and watch some Netflix, and then you see someone's walking their dog or something, and that's where it's definitely, I can see how that would happen.
Yeah.
And so I know we've been focusing a lot on driving safety, but when we talk about the winter season being the most dangerous, what are some of the other things that we have to look out for?
Yeah, so one of them would be electrical safety.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, holidays, Halloween, for example, hanging up lights and stuff like that. Here in Korea, you get a completely different set of voltage, like type of electricity.
Yeah,
right?
with the 120 versus the 220?
Yeah, 110.
Oh, 110.
110 versus 220.
Clearly, I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times, people just think, oh, it's plug and play. Well, it might be. But, take that time, look at that owner's manual, look at the label on there, figure out what type of electricity, that piece of equipment it requires, or if you have those step downs, those transformers, right? Yeah. So those are very important. You just be like, oh, I'm going to plug this in, and it's a 1 kilowatt, and you're running, I don't know, you're running your washing machine on it, and the next thing you know, it starts smoking and catches on fire or whatever, right? So
you can just plug them in, then start plugging things in. It's not like a extension cord or anything.
Right.
You have to actually, I think you were saying before, you have to actually monitor them and make sure they're doing all right.
You have to monitor it, but then before you even do that, you got to do math in it, right? So so it really comes down to watts. So it's not plug and play necessarily. If you have a little one and you're going to plug in your cell phone, you're probably safe. Again, reference your owner's manual. Reference what the manufacturer says. But you have to calculate how many watts are in there, especially if you're going to plug in multiple items into this one transformer. You take each one from each individual item to include the safety or the surge protector, and you calculate all those up, total watts. You just add them, right? Simple, basic math, and then look at what the manufacturer has for the transformer. They will tell you how many watts it's capable of handling. And then also the manufacturer, like from the PX those transformers buy, they also want you to have a 50% buffer. So, you add 1 + 1 + 1, that's 3, plus 50%. There you go. And then as you look at the transformer, what it requires. If you're under the 50%, you're good. Plug it in. Plug all your items in. You're good to go.
Right. And this is the time of year where we plug in a lot of stuff, whether it's Halloween lights, crock pots, trees,
safety heaters.
Yeah, safety heaters.
Or not safety heaters. Oh my God. Space heaters. What are we talking about? Yeah.
Well, safe space heaters are safety heaters.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Good recovery.
I think that's a new product. You could.
There you go. Yeah, no, good recovery. Yeah, so you definitely want to go back and monitor all of your electronics that you start plugging in, right? If it starts getting warm, you might need to, downgrade a little bit. I'll start unplugging some things and get another one in there, all that type stuff.
I think you were mentioning with space heaters, there is like additional risk when you're trying to like use them to keep yourself warm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, space heaters are great, they'll keep you warm, but they also pull a lot of power, right? So if you're renting on the economy, your landlord might be a little upset at you, but that electricity bill is going to go up. But the other thing you really get to consider too is that you want to get one of those ones where if it gets knocked over, it turns off instead of just sitting there burning on your carpet, and then next thing you know, your stuff is on fire. Or if you got it real close to your bed at night, and your blanket, you're tosser and turner like me, and your blanket ends up on top of it. Will it catch fire? Right, and you're racked up.
Hazard.
Yeah. So you want to maintain at least 3 feet around it, like at all times. Kind of put it in the middle of nowhere where it can't get knocked over. Things like that. Nothing can land on top of it, and then make sure you turn it off. Right? Like it's not plug in, turn on and forget, right? So if you're leaving, turn it off and unplug it. Just don't leave it on all times.
Yeah, I think having like a temperature goal probably rather than just leaving it on and like letting the room get to like 100 degrees and now you're increasing risk by just setting like a temperature. Like when mom and dad used to do with the thermostat, and they're like, it's already 65. What more do you want?
Right. Yeah. So
when we talk about recreational safety too, and I know you mentioned that you don't you yourself avoid the snowboarding and skiing because of the risk, but for the people who do enjoy that stuff, what are some things that you recommend?
So one, get training, right? So putting on skis or putting on a snowboard and just going out there, that's a method, but it's probably not the safest method, right? So ask for an instructor, pay for the little bit. Pay a little bit of money and be professionally trained and learn the ins and outs and the various types of safety mitigations that go along with that type of event, right? So, I'm Chris Starnes, and I'm throwing on skis for the first time, and I'm going to go outback skiing. It's probably not the safest thing for me to do, right? I'm just going to go out in the woods
out
and
by yourself.
Yeah, just go for it, right? Get some experience. Hey, don't be afraid to or embarrassed to jump on the little kiddie lane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I start on the bunny slopes.
Yeah,
you need to warm up somewhere. And if the kids get in your way, just kind of boot them out of the way. It's great.
Yeah, but get trained, right? Just ask for help and get trained by a professional, right?
I think you were talking about layering, and so there is such a thing as like over layering, right?
Yeah. So when you and I were talking about, we talked about that movie.
Christmas Story.
Yeah, Christmas Story, right? Where the mom dresses up the little kid and he can't even put his arms down.
Around,
It's great, right? It's funny, but if you overdress, you run the risk of overheating and then dehydrating. Right. So a lot of people think, oh, it's cold, I'm not going to drink water, or they consume less water. So take that into account, right? It should just be loose, warm. And then and you want to be layered to where your clothing is easily to be taken off or put back on.
Gotcha.
All right.
So getting all poofed out isn't the safest option.
Right. Yeah. So, the 3 onesies and then, whatever other type clothes you have on piled on top of that probably isn't the best method. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And then, get clothing that is designed for the cold weather, for the type of environment, right? So, those summer Nikes, and then you're going to go up to the slopes and just walk around in the mountains, is probably not the best to be walking around
with cold toes.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you do mention like the dehydration, and I think that's definitely not something that you think about. I think sunburn too, when you're on the slopes, talking about sun being reflected off the snow and it's on your face and having to cover your, it's like the things we think about. It's like, well, I don't want to freeze to death, but it's like, well, you could also get dehydrated and get sunburned.
Yeah. And then chilblains, with your eyes, right?
Yeah.
So that really, what that is like a sunburn on your eyes.
Oh, wow.
Right. So chilblains is like little blisters in your eyes that are from the sun, right? So
that sounds extremely
wonderful, right?
Yeah.
So just, you want to make sure you got eye protection on, appropriate eye protection.
Cool sunglasses.
Yeah. throw some sun. It doesn't hurt to put some sunblock on. It is recommended. Just to mitigate those factors as well. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're gonna have fun, the best way to have fun is be safe while you're having fun.
Yeah.
It's like when you're taking risk in your personal life, is like it's the you want to take like the going down the slopes. You want to risk getting blisters in your eyeballs. I don't think that's like ever a goal when you're out skiing, just trying to stare right up at the sun.
Yeah. And if you like having fun, it's not a one-time event, right?
Mm-hmm.
So be safe about it so you can do it again.
Right.
And then again, or for as long as you want and or willing, to do it. So, going out, having fun on the ski slopes or whatever is not necessarily a one-time event. So, just do it safely so you can
have the
experience
equipment.
it again.
Yeah, have the equipment and don't make it a miserable time so you do want to go out again. Yeah, it is. I think that stuff, a lot of first-timers, when they aren't prepared properly, they have an absolute garbage time. And maybe a couple steps of preparation, or having some buddies with you could keep that from happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when we, I think last but definitely not least, talking about like winter health and safety. I know you mentioned it when we talked before, is mental health.
Yeah.
So like mental health in the wintertime, that's a. I feel like there's two sides, because you have the holidays, you have the overall spirit of like togetherness, but then it's also mostly dark and cold. So.
Yeah. So your environment plays a lot into it. It's cold and it's dark, and so a lot of people just want to stay indoors, and people in general are normally like social animals, right? That's just what we are. We like to be around others, and stuff like that. Everyone kind of then starts to isolate themselves, not necessarily because they want to, but because it's cold. No one wants to be out there, be cold and miserable, right? So then that leads to other things, for mental health. And, mental health is very important for anyone. And I always tell people, seek professional help. It's near and dear to my heart. Whether it be work-related, home-related, talk to someone. Heck, if you want, you come on, you stop by the safety office and you come talk to me. Yeah. I'm not a trained professional, but you know what? Come talk to me.
And I think we do. And you mentioned that, and I think something that we talk a lot about in this podcast is, there's a lot of awesome things about being stationed in Korea. But one of the drawbacks is you don't have those support systems like you would back in the States. And so when you're, when you want to call your friends and family, a lot of times that you'd want to call them and you're awake, they're asleep. And so we have to lean on each other a lot more than we would say if we were stationed somewhere back in the U.S. And I think, that's that is such a very that's a very good offer, because sometimes the safety guy, when he's got some time on his hands, is if somebody wants to come talk to you, then and same. Like I think being available to each other because we don't have our friends and family is such a huge safety net when we talk about like the loneliness and isolation.
Yeah, and then you just got your family, you miss your family and stuff like that, and I've been there. Yeah. I've been there through numerous holidays and missed birthdays and all the other significant life events. So I get it. Again, I work for the soldier, right? Whether it be from the commander all the way down to the brand new private, that's my job, right? Is to be there and make sure that they're safe. And a part of that again is mental health. Again, I'm not a trained mental health professional, but you know what? You come in and I will listen to you. Yeah. Right. And then I will find the professionals there to help you. Yeah. Just stop on by.
And I think you make a good point. Is like we don't have to be professionals. We just have to be empathetic. We have to listen, and we have to let the person who's talking to us know that their experiences are real. What they're going through is it's okay, it's normal, and that we're here for them. Absolutely. I think that's a huge part of like being there for each other. Yeah. So, as we're kind of winding down this conversation, would you say like 3 points that you want anyone listening to our podcast to take away from winter safety?
Okay, so I think number one is going back to the very beginning of our conversation when we say, don't be stupid. Okay, right. People need to define what that is, right? Yeah. Like
that's on the leader.
Yeah. Or even your buddy, and be like, hey. Sergeant Starnes is saying, don't be stupid. But what he's really saying is, don't do this. Check on your buddy, let him know. So be able to define that. Number two, invest in your safety. Whether it costs you a couple bucks, some won or whatever, invest in it. Mm-hmm. You get what you you get out what you put in.
Yeah.
Right. And then number 3, for mental stability, mental health is talk to professionals, talk to someone, you know, something, just don't keep it balled up. It's okay. Right. So those would really be 3 big things that I would stress to anyone, you know, taken away, you know, 3 big takeaways.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So, and you know, kind of wrapping it up, I just really want to say, you know, how lucky are we, you know, to be in 19th ESC, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great organization. You know, I've had conversations with General Chris, Command Sergeant Major Peters, various leaders throughout the organization,
and they care.
Oh, they do. Yeah. And you can tell when someone's like genuinely concerned for the soldiers, and someone who just says that just because they it sounds like the right thing to do, right?
They read it in a book about being a leader.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right. And but no, you know, all the leaders that I've talked to, like all the way down, even at the battalion level, and then the soldiers that I've talked to, the individual soldiers, like they generally care.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like it's just so important that as a leader, you generally care for your soldiers.
Absolutely.
Right. And then understand their safety, and then doing everything you possibly can to ensure their safety. And so, again, how lucky are we? I mean, it's an awesome command team up there. Our DCO, Colonel Baker's amazing. Our Chief of Staff, Colonel Henneman, is amazing. Our G3 team up there, you know, when they're putting all their op orders together and making these plans and stuff, you know, they do take the extra time to ensure that the risk management process is there. And, like, it's just it's a great place to be.
Yeah.
And be a part of the organization. It really is. It's great.
That's a good station of plug choice. So if you're hearing that, go on and give 19th ESC a look. Yeah, we have some job openings.
Yeah, you know, this is going to be on YouTube, right? So they always say hit that like and subscribe.
We'll post the openings right here.
Yeah, no, but yeah.
So we have a tradition on the Every Soldier Counts podcast where we ask our guests who come, what is your favorite part of being in Area 4?
Man, you put me on the spot. That's a great one, because you know it's
not a stumper.
No, it is for me, because I've never really considered that. But I guess being in Area 4 has just been amazing. Like up at Area 1, I guess we had to travel. You know, get on a bus, go to Ouijambu if we wanted something that kind of resembles some sort of normalcy or something like that. But here, it's just amazing. Like they say, powerful Daegu. That's the new one now, right? They got rid of colorful Daegu. Daegu is an amazing place to be. It's really
right
is.
Outside the door.
Yeah.
And this is,
they got shopping centers, movie theaters, restaurants, and everything in between. It's awesome. And getting out there and talking to the local population. So my apartment complex, I think, again, I don't walk around my apartment complex stalking everybody, but I have not seen it yet, right?
Safety inspection. Safety inspection.
Exactly. Yeah. What's your nationality? No, but like, it seems like I think I'm the only, like, I guess you could say, foreigner in my apartment complex, and I talk to my neighbors. Yeah. Right. We end up striking conversations and stuff like that. So just getting out and learning about the culture, learning you know, what the South Koreans, what they have to offer and stuff like that. It's just been amazing. It's been a very wonderful and accepting time. You know, and I guess that is one thing that I really like that I did not get, you know, on my previous tours up in Area 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's easy to take for granted the fact that this is one of the few bases in the Army where there's just a big city right out there. Yeah. And you can live, you can do your training, you can do all the things that we do in the Army. And then when you're done, you can be like, I'm going to go watch a movie at the mall. Yep. And then I'm going to do some shopping, and then I'm going to eat a really nice restaurant, and then I'm going to go back to my barracks. Awesome. Yeah, it is a very unique experience that you get to have here at in Area 4. So,
yeah, that's great.
Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
This was a wonderful conversation. I know we had like, I think we had 3 points we wanted to hit. We ended up hitting like 7.
Yeah. So. Hey, it's great. You know, let's keep it going. But we'll definitely have to continue doing this. You know.
Yeah. You've been a wonderful guest, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you again, Chris, 19th ESC Safety Officer. Yeah. I think we covered a lot of really good topics. This has been the 19th ESC Every Soldier Counts podcast. Remember, you can hear us anywhere you listen to, anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. Also, if you want to see my beautiful mug, you can follow the link on Facebook and watch our video podcasts on YouTube. Thank you, and see you next time.